Hi everyone. We are going to follow up the modes of discourse and types of claims video by looking at travel getting there, or just to shorten it up, we'll refer to it as trains moving forward because it is an argument for trains, of course. Um, we will touch a little bit on what types of claims we see in that essay and what types of discourse we see as well to continue practicing those parts and understanding them well enough so you know when to choose them in your own writing. But really, we're going to look at trains to talk about a different way to approach your argument. And we're going to call this rhetorical approach. So, your rhetorical situation, as you know, is just knowing who your audience is, knowing what the problem is, and then knowing what your purpose is because of it. Um, your rhetorical approach is almost going to be a response to that rhetorical situation. Now, what's the best way to achieve my purpose in a general sense first, and then from that general sense, looking into what types of claims need to be made and what types of development need to happen. So this is going to be looking at what we'll call this rhetorical approach in travel, getting there, and compare it to NAPS as well. And then also some modes of discourse. So this will be a fairly short video. We won't talk at length about trains. We're just going to point out a couple things about its problem-making section and its rhetorical approach that will help you in your first draft of the indefensive essay, which is going to be strictly a problem-making or rhetorical situation draft. You're only going to make an argument for the problem. You're not going to get into the solution just yet. So we want to look at different ways that Barbara Holland is not only studying her rhetorical situation, but really developing her problem. So let me get to this worksheet that I've put together. And this is going to be an ongoing worksheet that I'll continue to add to as we read cigarettes and cats and buying things and books. But for now, we've just read naps and travel getting there. So this is all we have to work with so far in terms of rhetorical approach. But these two will at least give us enough to understand as we start thinking about our first draft of the indefensive essay to build our own rhetorical approach. So, what I mean by rhetorical approach, knowing your audience, problem, and purpose will help you identify the best approach to your argument. What's the best way to explain the problem? What's the best way to introduce and or defend your topic? These are the kind of questions that you need to be asking yourself always. These are critical questions that help you come up with answers about the best way to convince your audience. So here is the approach, the rhetorical approach we have in NAPS. I'm going to give a general and then a specific approach because the general is what you'll be able to look at and decide if your topic in your rhetorical situation fits into that category. Because rhetorical approach isn't just decided by your rhetorical situation, but it's also decided by what your topic is and what options come from that topic. So here is a general approach in NAPS. It basically says, you, audience, don't do this because of how you feel about it. And how you feel about it is a problem, but you need to do this. So it's basically just saying, audience, you don't do it, but you need to do it. So more specifically in NAPS, Barbara Holland is essentially saying this. You, audience, don't nap because of how you feel about napping and how society or modern culture pressures you to feel about napping. But you need to nap. And so that's one rhetorical approach, just identifying that your audience doesn't do or doesn't enjoy your topic because of how they feel about it or how they've been made to feel about it. And you're just simply going to say, but you need to nap, and you're going to show them how to think about it or feel about it differently. So that's one approach that we get in NAPS. Another approach we get in travel getting there, and we'll go to that essay in just a second. And in general, the approach in travel getting there is this. You don't need to do this. Sorry, you don't do this because you prefer to do this or that instead. But this or that is problematic, so you should consider this. In general, you can plug in your own topic here if you needed to. Specifically for travel getting there, Barbara Holland is saying this: you, audience, don't travel by train because you prefer to travel by plane and or car. By traveling by plane and car can be problematic, so you should consider traveling by train. So this is a completely different approach. Um, for the most part in this essay, Barbara Holland doesn't say, oh, well, you don't take trains, audience, because you don't like them or because you feel about them a certain way or been told to feel about them a certain way. She does maybe briefly touch on that, but that's not the heart of her problem making. The heart of her problem making, which follows these becauses, right? This is her development of the problem is in this reasoning, is because they prefer something else. They prefer to fly by plane, or they prefer to drive by car when they travel. They don't really think about trains. And that is the problem she's addressing here. So it's more of a comparison. She's going to point out the problems with plane and car in order to then respond that her solution is to take a train. So cigarettes and cats and buying things and books will have similar but different approaches to these two. These two are a good start for you to start thinking, where does my topic fit in? Does my topic fit into this kind of NAPS approach? Does it fit better into this trains approach? Or maybe it fits into one of these a little bit better. So this, again, we'll add to this as we go, and then I'll make this available to you when we're done filling it out. Get out of here and pull up travel getting there. Something that I want to point out is, let's go as full screen as we can, is what I pointed out about the NAPS essay, and that is the length of the problem-making section. Now, her essay starts here on page 88. Problem making goes through 88, goes through 89, and not until the middle of 90 when she says stepping into a train on the other hand, which is her transition out of the problem and into her focus on trains. This is the moment she changes, which shows us that 2.5 pages, again, have been simply problem making. What is the problem? This time, the problem isn't how her audience feels about her topic, but it's what they prefer to do instead and why she thinks it's a problem. That's something to note about your problem making section. Your problem making can be either what your audience thinks about your topic, that is problematic, or what you think about your audience's alternatives to your topic, which you think are problematic, or it could be a combination of the two. But it's good just to think that way. There's so many different ways to develop a problem-making section. We have a video later this week that will talk about how to do that more specifically. But I just wanted to point out right away that we have these different ways of building the problem. But so far in our first two examples, each of them is developed for 2.5 pages. And so that shows you that your problem-making draft for the indefensive essay should be pretty lengthy. It should stretch to develop a problem for 2+ pages to see how much you can get out of it. So after a brief introduction, where she introduces the idea of trains, she introduces the idea of boating even, and flight, and then she moves on to a comparison, or sorry, her talk about the audience's preference to take planes or take cars. Let's see. She does make a claim early on that trains, even here, even now, are the only way to travel if you're traveling to see what's out there in the world. Now, In NAPS, I told you that she doesn't make her argument or her statement of purpose until after the problem making is done. Now, here we have it earlier, both at the beginning of this paragraph and the end. She says, by land, trains are the best way to travel, and still, they're the only way to travel if you're traveling to see what's out there in the world. And then she moves into her problem. Now, the reason she can get away with this is because she has a couple modifiers that would keep her audience from objecting. One thing you always want to consider as you write, either a problem-making section or a claim or a solution section or what kind of example you're going to choose. You want to consider how your audience might object to you, and you want to be able to find a way around that objection. So here, by adding the modifier by land, trains are the best way to travel, she finds a way to get her audience who prefers planes not to disagree. Her audience who prefers planes, who she knows she's writing to, might say, oh, well, yeah, sure, whatever. By land, trains are the best way to travel. I don't care because I take planes. And so they're not objecting, but she still gets to make a statement about trains' superiority. She just modifies it a little bit to avoid their objection at this time. And then also here, if you're traveling to see what's out there in the world. Obviously, when you fly, you can't really see what's out in the world. You just are up in the clouds and up in the sky. So she puts this modifier. Her audience might say, oh, well, when I'm on the plane, I'm not trying to see what's out in the world. I'm trying to get to a destination, at which point then I will see what's out in the world. So she includes these modifiers, and they keep the audience from objecting. And then once she's kind of introduced trains, introduced flight and boating as other ways of travel, she moves right into the problem. And she says, from a plane. And then she gives us 1, 2 very long paragraphs about planes and why they're problematic. Why are they problematic? The view is terrible. What else? It's brown. It's endless. Let's see. It's hard to travel if we don't know what we're looking at. We're guessing it's what's down there. They're uncomfortable. The food is bad. So on and so forth. So she's just developing an explanation of the problem with planes. And because her audience has a preference for planes, she's pointing out the problem with their preference before she then goes on to argue why trains are superior. Of course, she goes on to cars as well. Cars, 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 cars. She talks about cars for even more time than she talks about planes. And then she gets to trains. So that's all I actually wanted to look at in this video in terms of rhetorical approach. I just wanted to see that different approach, the kind of comparison approach, building the problem by looking at the issues with their readers' preferences before you move on to, or before she moves on to her argument. We can look really quickly at her claims and development. If we just looked here even, trains are the basic metaphor for travel. It is a definition claim. Trains are, or train is. So it's a definition claim. And then, so she goes to go on and say, okay, why are they a metaphor for travel? How did they become a metaphor for travel? She moves on really quickly to give us examples. Songs, farm boys, and maybe that's it. The kid who waited by the track. She's giving us these visuals, these illustrations, different scenarios that show that trains are a metaphor for travel, or they're synonymous with travel and a type of travel that so many people know. So definition claim and example mode of discourse. And we can go back and find other ones as well. But that's for you to do, because now you're starting to learn the different types of claims and different modes of discourse, being able to see them, where the writers were reading, use them, and be able to decide how you want to use them. And this video has shown you also how to think about rhetorical approaches to the problem-making section of your In Defense of essay. that will be it for now. And we are going to pick up with the essay Cigarettes in the next video and talk more about problem making, rhetorical approach, and rhetorical awareness, as well as different types of claim and modes of discourse. So until then, enjoy these Barbara Holland essays. Bye.